Greetings, BC Boom. It's yours truly, Ondrei, here with you again on the channel designed with you in mind. First time in 2022, and I'm hoping and praying that 2022 is off and running in a very real and positive way for you. We've been through a lot over the last 2 years, globally, a lot. There's been a lot of changes, I'm sure, globally, but also individually. I'm hoping that you are being drawn closer and closer to God through these situations, opposed to being pushed away. That's what turning points are. Turning points are those times in life when we experience challenges, and those challenges sometimes draw us nearer and strengthen our faith, or they sometimes can cause us to question our faith. We've seen a lot of individuals in the Bible, especially David. David went through lots of challenges, lots of trying situations. However, David is also known for declaring, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." That's the attitude we should have, but sometimes it's very difficult. I want you to grab something to take notes, whether it's your phone or a tablet or old-fashioned pen and paper, as our ministry partner Shane comes before us at this time to explain more about turning points. I'll see you soon.
Hey, I'm Shane. Let's time travel for a second. Okay, not really, but in your minds. I want you to go back to your first day of high school. Actually, go back to the night before. Do you remember how that felt? I'm guessing it was probably 10% excited and 90% terrified. I know that's how I felt when I was going into high school. And looking back now, you know that you survived. So it wasn't that bad, but in the moment, it was a scary idea to start high school. I've never met a first day freshman that wasn't slightly nauseated, especially when you have to find your lunch table in the lunch room. I remember my first day of high school. I was pretty nervous. I couldn't stop thinking, this changes everything. I'd gotten pretty good at life as an 8th grader, but life as a high schooler, I'd never done that before. It was a turning point. In the past few weeks, we've been talking about things that grow our faith. Things that make our faith go from something counterfeit or just a fake copy to something real and personal to us. We've been talking about how our faith can shift from being an imitation of someone else's to being something that we own ourselves. And maybe more than anything else, turning points in life do just that. Chances are you've had a few turning points in life already. These are the moments that turn our lives around and set us in a direction that we weren't going in before. Sometimes they can be positive things or even neutral things. It's you getting a part-time job after school, or making the varsity team, or your mom getting remarried. Your dad loses his job and then you lose your house. Or it's that moment where the person you'd been dating for 2 years breaks up with you. These are just examples, but think about a turning point that you've experienced in your life. Today, I want to spend some time talking about those sort of turning points. Turning points are often difficult times that challenge us and make life hard, but what do they do to our faith? It's really wild. Tough times like these, they have the power to build our faith or completely destroy it. I've seen it go both ways. I've walked with teenagers through just about everything, and I can think of a bunch of times when I've seen students walk out on the other side of the storm with a rock-solid, unshakable faith. It's hard to imagine that happening when they're in the middle of it, but it actually does happen. Their faith, it grows stronger than before. It's amazing to watch. In these circumstances, they can be described in no other way except turning points. They're defining moments, times when it seemed like God was far away, but ended up being much closer than you thought. When you get to the other side of these turning points, you're able to look back and say, wow, God is no longer someone I learn about in church. God is real and God is close to me. When people encounter these sorts of circumstances, suddenly things get really, really personal. Let me show you what I mean. You've probably heard the term, life is a journey. It's really kind of true. I mean, we all start at one point, it's called birth, and we go through all sorts of different things. Some things feel pretty neutral. Other things, they're twists and turns. We make new friends, and that's really great. Or maybe we go through life and, I don't know, our our parents wind up getting a divorce, or maybe we start a new instrument and that instrument gets us into a brand new band, or we get injured in a sport that we love to play. I mean, there are all sorts of things in life that are turning points. Life is filled with turning points just like this. And turning points, they change our faith. One of the best illustrations of turning points that change someone's faith comes from the life of Jesus. It's described by one of his friends, John, who wrote it all down. John writes this: "Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. These three, Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, they weren't just random people that Jesus stumbled upon. They were close friends with Jesus. So after Lazarus got sick, Mary and Martha reached out." John records it this way. He says, "The sisters sent word to Jesus. They sent a messenger to find Jesus, who was 2, 3, or even 4 days away by travel on foot," which is the way they traveled back in the day. Their message said this: "Lord, the one you love is sick." In other words, they didn't even have to say his name. They knew that Jesus would automatically know who they were talking about. Mary and Martha knew that Jesus had healed many people, even strangers. So of course, when Lazarus became sick with a life-threatening illness, they called on Jesus to show up. But things didn't go exactly as expected. Jesus didn't arrive at their house for a few days, and by the time he got there, Lazarus had already died. This was the worst kind of turning point that you can imagine. So, you can imagine how Mary and Martha are feeling when Jesus shows up at their house. Martha leaves her house and goes out to meet Jesus as he approaches. And this is what happens. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask." Imagine being in Martha's position. She's lost her brother. She's angry. She's sad. She's wondering why Jesus hadn't been there when she needed him to be. But even after saying all this, she says something that communicates her trust in who Jesus was. That's what turning points do for us. They sharpen our focus. They get our attention. They force us to ask the question, what do we really think God is like? And when things fall apart, when things don't go as planned, when things take a turn, what do I believe about God? Martha, on what may have been the worst day of her life and the worst pain that she'd known, experienced Jesus being present with her. And then Jesus responds, and John writes it out like this. Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." And Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" And then Martha responds, "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who is to come into the world." Martha believed. She trusted in Jesus, even though her brother died. Jesus didn't show up on time to save her brother, but her trust in Jesus was still very real. John tells us after this, Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" In that moment, Jesus felt exactly what we feel when we mourn and our hopes are shattered. Jesus gets our pain. John telling us that Jesus wept it's not just a fun detail. It's a sign that we're never alone in our hurt. As bad as things get, Jesus is in it with us. He experiences it alongside us. When a turning point gets our attention, we will always find Jesus in the middle of it with us. At the hardest part of the story, when hope seems lost, he's there. And then Jesus does something crazy. He asked Mary and Martha if they'd have their servants remove the stone covering Lazarus' grave. But at this point, Lazarus has been dead in the tomb for 3 or 4 days. Like, things are starting to stink, honestly. Like, it can't be pretty in there. So this was a strange request. But they did as Jesus asked and took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. The story ends this way. "Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. It'd be easy to read this story and think that the point is a happy ending. Lazarus came back. That's a big deal. The end. And it would be tempting to think that maybe that's what Jesus will do in all of our turning points in life. Maybe that's what makes a real faith, when Jesus shows up and makes the impossible possible. But we've all had moments where we waited and we prayed and we hoped and we begged for God to do something, and he didn't. So what then? What does that mean for our faith? That's when we remember what Jesus did before he raised Lazarus from the dead. He wept. He was with Mary and with Martha in their pain, alongside them, before the miracle, before the resurrection, before anyone had an idea of a happy ending. He was there on their worst day. And he was there when the worst day became the best day and Lazarus was raised from the dead. The same is true for us. No matter what kind of turning point that we're facing, Jesus is with us. If things get better or if things get worse, Jesus, he's there. And when we realize that, that is what grows our faith. Not that we always get the thing that we want, but when we realize that no matter what happens, Jesus is with us. That makes for a real faith, not a counterfeit one. Our pain, it doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be a part of the story, but not the point. It can get our attention, but it doesn't have to destroy our faith. It can even move us closer to God. In fact, that's exactly what this story also shows us. It's possible for our faith to grow, for God to seem more real than he ever has to us, for us to see God more clearly in our painful turning point. It's possible to go through the toughest pain possible and come through it trusting God even more. Not because God made it go away, but because God used it to stretch you, grow you, and to make your faith feel more real and personal. And when that happens, people around us will see God in a bigger way, just like the people who surrounded Mary and Martha. It will make God more obvious to them. They will see that your faith is authentic, it's real, not counterfeit. And as a result, maybe they'll choose to trust God even more. The truth is, you're gonna hit some turning points in life. You've probably already hit a few, and you'll likely experience a few more. Every time you do, you'll be tempted to lean away from God, to wonder where God is or if God even cares. I've wondered that myself. You may be tempted to think that maybe your faith is counterfeit because things didn't turn out the way you wanted. But the story of Martha and Mary and Lazarus, it tells us that no matter what we're facing, the worst day or the best day, Jesus is there. And when we believe that and experience that, it grows our faith. In fact, it can make your faith even more authentic than ever before. It may not feel like it when you're in the middle of it. It may feel like the opposite, actually. But a turning point, it doesn't last forever. And it's possible that when you come out on the other side, you have a greater faith than you ever could have imagined. Even more, your story of getting through to the other side, it could be used to grow a real faith in someone else. Your story of how Jesus was with you, even when it was difficult, even when it felt like the opposite, could be the thing that inspires someone else. Just imagine that. So, when you're facing a turning point, ask yourself these questions. Where is God in this? Maybe it feels like he's nowhere because things are difficult and not getting any better. Try looking closer. Maybe God is in the friend who texted you out of the blue to see how you were doing. Maybe God is in that encouragement from your coach or group leader. Maybe God is in a world outside your front door that you slowed down and noticed on a walk. Look for God because God is there. Another question to ask is this: how can this tough situation help my faith grow? Remember, this turning point isn't forever. And when it's done, it's possible that you can look back and see how your faith became more real. Maybe not yet, maybe not right away, but eventually, even the hardest things can become things that cause growth. Because God can use turning points to grow our faith. The truth is, nobody signs up for tough times. I want you to know that. Even on days faith doesn't feel real, if you stay close and choose to hold on, you will find that God stays close too. God can use your tough times, as painful as they are, to make your faith more real so that the next time you face a difficult situation, you're even stronger, even more sure, and even more confident that God is real and that he can be trusted. Group is a great place to talk about these questions because sometimes we just need to hear other people's stories and they can hear ours too. And when we hear those things, we know that we can make it through tough times. We need to hear from each other and encourage each other so we can remember that God is real and trustworthy, even when it feels like the opposite is true. So remember, God can use turning points to grow our faith.
Welcome back. I hope that was very beneficial to you. You see how Mary and Martha, they wanted Jesus there much earlier. However, he took his time. He took his time knowing that what was going to take place, And they totally initially missed it, had no clue what they were about to experience in getting their brother back alive. Now, I'd like to say this. Many times we experience situations and the way we pray or the desire we have or the results that we desire don't always materialize or manifest in the way we pray for it to take place. God has a plan. And the bottom line is, although we have a view or vision of what we desire to be the outcome, God has a plan. When we are totally submitted to God and His will, then we're okay with how He allows it to be finalized. The three Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, before being thrown into the fire that had been made 7 times hotter, declared, "Our God is able to deliver us. However, if He doesn't, we're still not going to bow down according to your wishes." They were okay with however God wanted to work it out. That's how we have to be. Faith, Faith, forsaking all, I trust Him. Regardless of what's taking place, regardless of how it turns out, regardless if I pray for one thing and God decides to do another or postpone, don't let your faith waver negatively. Don't be like Adam if we find ourselves in a situation running away from God. Instead, run towards God. Run closer, get closer. Forsaking all, I trust Him through the difficult times, through the challenging times, through the sad times, through the times that I just simply don't understand. I trust Him. I want to encourage you. 2022, let your faith be elevated. Let your faith soar to higher heights, and let the roots of your faith grow to deeper depths. Get closer to God in your faith, even in those turning points. My prayers are with you. Be encouraged. And we'll see you next time on the channel designed with you in mind.